Hey, my lovelies, this is episode 4 of the war we're not being told the full story about, an economic analysis for Africa and the Caribbean by me, Charmaine Hayden, right? In the last episode, we looked at how the global energy system actually works, the shipping routes, insurance markets, pipelines, and financial infrastructure that move oil and gas around the world. We saw how the Strait of Hormuz can effectively shut down without a single missile blocking the waterway. Now, I know some of you are thinking, woman, just get to the point. And this might feel like a slow burn Netflix series right now, guys, but I promise you, in order to understand why this conflict matters globally, we do need to zoom out first. So bear with me, okay? Because sometimes in geopolitics, the most important thing is not a single event. It is a sequence of events. So before we talk further about Iran, I want you to look at the calendar. Not as separate headlines, right? Look carefully. I want you to look at it as a pattern that only becomes really visible when you place certain events together over a short period of time. And as we go through that timeline, I want you to notice something specific. Not the events themselves, but the type of countries involved, right? December 2025, Nigeria. President Trump designates Nigeria a country of particular concern under the United States International Religious Freedom Act, citing escalating violence and the killing of Christians. Nigeria rejects the designation, arguing that the country faces complex security challenges affecting multiple communities across religious and regional lines. But the decision places Nigeria firmly on Washington's strategic radar. Nigeria is one of Africa's largest oil producers and home to the Dangote refinery. Interestingly, the largest refinery ever built on the continent and very new, right? In a world where global energy systems are becoming increasingly unstable, countries with large reserves, refining capacity, and regional influence inevitably become strategically important. January 3rd, 2026, Venezuela, right? The United States launches Operation Absolute Resolve. Delta Force operators and CIA personnel capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who's a sitting president, I must add, in a pre-dawn raid on his compound in Caracas. He and his wife are flown to New York to face narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. President Trump tells reporters that the United States will run Venezuela and deploy American oil companies to take control of its oil infrastructure. Venezuela sits on approximately 300 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. In case you didn't know, it's one of the largest proven oil reserves on any country on earth. Production under Maduro had fallen to roughly 800,000 to 1 million barrels per day, or so it's reported, right? Down from more than 3 million in the late 1990s. By February, exports had surged sharply. Bloomberg, citing Kpler tanker tracking data, reported that exports rise to 788 barrels per day in February from 383,000 in January as previously sanctioned crude became released from storage. January 2026, Cuba. I don't know if you know about Cuba and the United States' long winding history, but if you don't, I'm assuming that you do. Right. For years, Venezuela has been supplying Cuba with roughly 35,000 barrels of oil per day under a barter agreement. Cuba sent doctors and teachers, and then Venezuela sent subsidized fuel. That supply line is now cut. On January 30th, Executive Order 14,380 declares a national emergency and authorizes tariffs on imports from any country supplying oil to Cuba. Cuba has not received a single barrel of imported oil in 2026. So the whole of this year, right? The island requires roughly 110,000 barrels per day to function, but produces only about 40,000 domestically. 8 of the country's 16 thermoelectric plants are now offline. Blackouts are leaving large parts of the island without electricity for up to 24 hours at a time. January 28th, Libya. A meeting takes place at the El Shi Palace in Paris. Saddam Haftar, the son of Libyan Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar, meets with advisors to Libya's Western Prime Minister to discuss Libya's political future and its oil sector. Libya holds roughly 48 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest reserves on the African continent. February 3rd, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the most prominent son of the former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi and a candidate in Libya's planned presidential election, is assassinated in his home in Zintan. Security cameras were disabled before the attack and 3 other people were killed. His death removes one of the few figures analysts believed might have been able to have the political reach to unify Libya's rival factions. February 2026, Libya's oil rush. Western oil companies begin rapidly moving back into Libya. Total Energies and ConocoPhillips signed a 25-year agreement to expand the Waha oil concession, targeting production increases from roughly 370,000 to 850 barrels per day. Chevron, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, Eni and Repsol all express interest in Libya's first licensing round in 17 years. Libya's production rises above 1.5 million barrels per day. February 28th, Iran. The United States and Israel launched major strikes on Iran. Iran holds roughly 209 billion barrels of proven oil reserves and sits beside the Strait of Hormuz, the single most important choke point in the global energy system. Within days, shipping traffic through the strait collapses and global energy markets begin reacting. Guys, step back and look carefully. Look at the type of countries we just moved through. Venezuela, the largest oil reserves on earth. Libya, the largest oil reserves in Africa. Iran, one of OPEC's largest producers and the country that sits beside the Strait of Hormuz. Nigeria, Africa's largest oil producer and the home to the continent's largest refinery. Cuba, a longtime ally of Venezuela and Iran, whose fuel supply is now cut. Those events might look unrelated when you read them as separate headlines, but when you place them on the same calendar, a pattern begins to emerge. Now listen, guys, I want to be careful here. Pattern recognition can easily slide into conspiracy thinking if you're not disciplined. You do not have to believe that there is a single document in a single room laying this out in a master plan, but you do have to acknowledge that major powers think in resource terms. They plan in energy terms, and when multiple events affect the world's largest energy producers within the same short window of time, that is something serious analysts pay attention to, right? I will let you interpret what that means. And in the next episode, we're going to take the pattern one step further, because when energy markets move, they do not move in isolation. They move in currencies, they move in debt markets, they move food prices, they move entire economies. In episode 5, we're going to follow that chain reaction and see exactly how a war thousands of kilometres away begins to show up in everyday economies of Africa and the Caribbean. So join me in the next episode as we continue breaking down the real economic battlefield behind this conflict. Anyway, see you there. Don't forget to comment and share.